Thank you so much. Oh, there's my book. I still get a little thrill every time I see it. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm truly, truly thrilled to be here, to be talking about, really, it's my story, but I do believe that my story is universal, because let's face it, into everybody's life, difficulties fall. There was a line that I wrote in my book, and it goes, "What a fortunate thing it is when life alters you without warning." Now, it was actually one of the last lines that I wrote in my book, and it's actually in the prologue. So I was actually describing my experience of being diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is a very serious blood cancer. In fact, when I was diagnosed, the doctor, he paused after every line that he delivered. He said, "It's incurable," and I nodded, and he said, "And it's fatal," and I nodded. And there was a little bit of sweat coming down the side of his face. And he said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "Doc, would you like a glass of water? Because you look very, very nervous." And I know that sounds like a very strange reaction to have when you've just been diagnosed with what is essentially an incurable, considered fatal blood cancer. But I knew that this was somehow an opportunity. And I knew that dealing with my mortality and dealing with a very serious disease was actually going to be the fuel to change my life in ways that I had been wanting to change it and had never had the courage to do before that. So, as I said, I came to that line, how fortunate it is when life alters you without warning. And the other thing that, of course, life has taught me, even before I was diagnosed with cancer, is that change and unpredictability are built into our lives. I mean, we as human beings, we don't quite cope with that very well. I personally was, what I say, born to be a nomad. So I actually sought out adventure, I sought out, risky situations. I was someone who was always on the go. But inside, even though I projected this very brave kind of a face and this brave persona, inside I had 1,000,001 doubts about myself. There was a soundtrack going on in my mind. You're not good enough. What are you doing? You don't deserve this success. And now, for those of you who don't know, my career started very serendipitously, which is one of my favorite words, serendipity, which is when good fortune happens unexpectedly. But my career in entertainment in India started in 1991 when I was 16 years old. And it was an accident. I swear to God, it was an accident. I was an introverted girl. I never wanted to be the center of attention. So of course, what happens to someone like that? Oh, and I still remember as well in school, trying to figure out what is the profession I can go into where I will have the least possible human contact. Actor, right? Model? No. So in its own way, life was sort of guiding me and teaching me and pushing me, forcing me to push into my, strong edges, into the hard edges, pushing me out of my comfort zone. So life has been one of the greatest teachers. And being diagnosed with cancer at 37 and with multiple myeloma, which is a cancer where most people are diagnosed at around 65, did not actually shock me. And I'll tell you why. Because I knew that there was something wrong. There was something deep down inside in my body going wrong. but I had never given myself the permission to stop, and number two, to listen to my body. And I have a feeling as I'm saying this that there are many of you who might also find yourself in the same position, where the conditioning and the pressures of our society is to keep going, to keep achieving, is goal-oriented, don't stop, don't sleep, push, push, push. At what cost? Well, I found out the cost was almost losing my life, because I had disconnected so profoundly from my inner guide and from the signals that my body was sending me that I was about to go into cardiac arrest. When I actually went in to the doctor and had my blood test done, because I had avoided blood tests. I said, blood tests, that's boring, it's not for me. I have so many other important things to do, la, 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 la. Until I couldn't get off the floor one day. So there I went to the doctor. She took my blood. She sat me down. She opened, I'll never forget this, opened the file, and she stood up. And she looked at me. And she said, "How are you even standing?" And I kind of giggled nervously. I said, "What do you mean? I'm not standing, actually, I'm sitting." And she said, "Your red blood cells count is so low, you're about to go into cardiac arrest. What is wrong with you? How are you continuing? Why are you not listening to your body?" And she gave me this long lecture and then sent me to emergency and to get a blood transfusion. After which, of course, I felt very good, and I said, "Okay, that's fine," but the doctor said, now we have to figure out why this is happening. But you see, what ends up happening is our mind, our tricky mind, sometimes and quite often tries to take the lead and convince us that everything is okay, and to push ourselves much harder than we should be, because we are not aligned. Our mind, we are not also just a mind walking around. We are a body, we are a spirit as well. So cancer brought together all of my seeking towards wellness, and it forced me to make the changes in my life. So I hope that by sharing this with you, you won't need such a strong alarm bell or such a strong red flag like cancer. I don't wish that on anyone. Having said that, cancer has actually improved my life greatly. Now, I wanted to share that even though every difficulty is fuel for change, I do feel that the best medicine is preventative. And I have been a lifelong meditator. I've been meditating for the last 20 years. And so when people ask me, "How did you get through cancer?" I had a lot of resources to draw on. I had deep well of resources from my meditation practice and from my yoga. So I do believe that that prepared me for these shocks in life, because meditation isn't just about blanking out your mind, of course. Meditation is about watching your mind, making friends with your fears, and challenging your thoughts. And this is very, very important. Very important in recapturing ourselves. So I wanted to share with you a couple of my takeaways today, having gone through cancer, having now tried to blend together my wellness learnings with my everyday life. And by the way, I relapsed also in 2012 as well, about a month after I got married. And again, I wasn't extremely devastated by it, because all I thought about then was, I've missed a very important part of the puzzle. And I ended up going to a place called the Hippocrates Health Institute, where they taught me about nutrition, where they taught me about reversing disease using food. But basically today, one of my top tips, the number one for self-care and self-love, is very simple, but not that easy to implement. Slow down. Stillness. Quiet. We have to go within. See, I can in fact feel that in the room right now. Even I tend to sort of get all hyped up. Slow down. Isn't that beautiful? We're constantly rushing, we're constantly talking, we're constantly projecting our faces and our personalities, and we're constantly also looking outside ourselves when there is an entire universe inside of us. So, as much as we're always checking our external news field, our news feed, there is an internal news feed that we have to sometimes go into and check in with. What is right? Is this false news? Is it true? Why am I feeling so stressed? You know what? We don't need to ask anyone outside of ourselves. We must go within. So when you start asking, you start aligning. The first thing, of course, is how do you even know what it feels to be happy? I do a practice where I tune into my feelings. How am I feeling this morning, Lisa? How are you feeling? How are you feeling right now? And you know what? Emotions are tricky. We're not used to doing it. Okay, somebody asks you, how are you feeling? You're like, I'm fine. I'm okay. Right? Because we feel like they don't actually want to know, first of all, what we feel. And secondly, do we actually understand how to interpret what we're feeling? Feelings take on a physical feeling. The sense feeling, all the emotions take on a physical feeling in our body. So only through closing our eyes and being with ourselves can we understand, this is what stress feels like, that tightness in my heart and my chest, and this is what anxiety feels like, and this is what love feels like when it's coursing through your body, that openness. But you know what? We must create an instruction manual for ourselves. Isn't it fascinating that in today's world, we have instruction manuals for everything? You get your new iPhone and immediately you can sit down with an Apple Genius, or you get your other phone and somebody will tell you how it works. But who tells you how your own body works? Where's the instruction manual for that? Isn't it a tragedy that we don't know how our immune system works, right? How our fight or flight works. These are essential learnings. My other thing that I practice today is I believe that everybody in the world can be divided up into two categories. Either you believe life is for you or against you. And from that place, all of your actions arise. If you believe life is against you, then life is a struggle, that life is boring and competitive, and if he's successful, it's at the expense of my success. That is life is against you. When life is for you, life flows. No matter what comes into your life, no matter what challenges, no matter what triumphs, it's there for a reason. It's there to teach you. So from that, I do believe, however, in setting intentions, because I am obviously a life is for you kind of a person today. Even when the doctor sat with me and showed me the statistics, here's how much time you have to live, I kind of giggled. I think he was a little bit offended. Because you know what? When you believe that life is for you, everything that happens is a teaching. And I knew deep down inside that I was not a dot in a graph. He showed me the statistics and he says, here's a prognosis. People who are diagnosed with multiple myeloma normally have about 7 years. So, it's about 3 years, you have a couple more years to live. I just didn't believe him. We are conditioned in our lives to kind of put certain people on a pedestal, whether it's doctors and science and everything like that. Yes, they serve a very important role, but they do not tell the whole story, because we, as human beings, have a power and a mystery within ourselves to defy the odds, and I firmly believe that. So what I do, however, as a practice, is I do set intentions. Intentions can just be like a visualization. Here's what I want. I want to write a book. How the hell am I going to write a book? I want that my book should reach as many people as possible. I want to visualize that my book is also published in India, is published in North America, is published in England. I visualize it. And you know what? I put it into my internal GPS, and I let go. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that you're not putting in the hard work, right? You put in the hard work, and also, part of the really hard work is actually aligning your mind with where you want to go, like an arrow. This is where I want to go. I'm going to put this in my GPS. And the faith that, yes, it will happen. I don't know exactly when, but it will happen. So once you start digging deep inside yourself and watching your thoughts and understanding how powerful you are, it's your duty, I feel, as a human being to share your bounty with the world. You know, we don't talk, I think, enough in this world about compassion, about love. We're always talking about deadlines, right? We're talking about bottom lines. But we're not talking about that inner, most important essence which drives us all, love and compassion. And I think we need to start changing the dialogue and bringing it into our everyday lives, and it's absolutely possible. So what I do is a gratitude practice. You know what happens at the end of the day? Of course, we come home, and what's the first thing we do? Often we replay our day, and we talk about all the things that went wrong. You know, this person said this about me, or you know, I didn't get that promotion that I thought, and you know, and it was so irritating, the traffic was so bad. Okay, that's important to vent, but how about sometimes talking about the things that go right, that will make you actually pay attention to the little things in our day? It could be any little thing. It could be a bird song. It could be this moment, this gratitude for being alive and taking this breath. It could be just a moment of being able to close your eyes. It could be the gesture of a friend who surprised you. It could be a text message, a beautiful WhatsApp. Anything, all the little things, or it could even be the big things that sometimes we forget because as human beings we do have a negativity bias. You know, so my gratitude practice has honestly been one of the most important things I do. And this I share with everybody, and I invite you because it's also the easiest things to do. Every single morning, just say, thank you. Thank you for my life. Thank you for being here. And I guarantee you will find many things, each one of you individually, to be thankful for. And that can change the tide and bring a very different attitude into your working life, into your personal life, into your everyday life, because that's where we live. My last point is, prepare yourself for a miracle. Now, life is miraculous. Life is magic. And all we have to do is be open to it and prepare ourselves for it. Thank you. So I believe now Marcus is going to join me on stage. We're going to have a little tete-a-tete as well, a little chat about my book and various other things about thriving in life. And then I love questions, I have to say that. So anyone who has any comments or questions afterwards, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Oh, it's like a proper,
there's a chair. Yeah.
Like a little throne, isn't it?
All right, everyone. Dr. Marcus Ranney is GM India Thrive Global, and he's here for a fireside chat with Lisa.
Thank you. How amazing was that talk? I even had a little tear when you were talking about it. So I had all these questions, but so much of that was covered in the conversation. But let me start with this. So the book. So this is it, everyone. Close to the bone. Please pick up a copy after this talk.
We have signed copies as well.
That's right. We're going to be next door. It's obviously a very intimate account of your life and experiences. I mean, the title, Close to the Bone, sort of says it all. And you know, we know that we all wear masks in life. In fact, we were just talking about this Japanese proverb and Iranian proverb as well, where there are these three masks that we have. The one which we show to the outside world, the one which we wear when we are with our friends, our loved ones, our peers, and then there's the mask that only we see ourselves.
Yeah.
So through
I find that so fascinating, you know, it's true, isn't it? It's like, and I've heard it say, there's your public life, your private life, and your secret life. So actually, as I was discussing with Marcus in Close to the Bone, I've tried to actually expose all of them.
That's right.
And try to also align them, because quite often they're not in alignment as well, which is the main problem, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think the interesting thing with today's world of social media, it obviously allows us to curate our life for that outside world. So how do you decide how much vulnerability to show? Either through the book or through your Instagram account, etc., and therefore show that other mask to the rest of the world?
No, that's a great question. Again, vulnerability is such an interesting word and idea in today's world, where it is so much more about putting on those masks and putting on the persona. And again, we get so much advice about how to improve yourself and how to, makeup tutorials and leadership tutorials and all of this. And all of the, I think, messaging embedded in that is that you are not good enough. Right? You're not good enough. So it's very subtle, but it starts obviously in childhood, and it's reinforced ever so much when we come out into the world that somehow you're not good enough. Now, of course, we evolve through life, and we learn, and we grow, and we change. And yet, the courage to really be who we are, to show who we are to the world, I think is one of the most underrated kind of steps that you can take, right? And to be honest, I'm maybe... perhaps I share a little bit too much today, because I think that I have done so much work on myself. Primarily, one of the themes in Close to the Bone that I wanted to share is about how uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable, I have been in my profession, my whole life. How I call myself an accidental actress. And literally, my career began as an accident. So, I always felt kind of pressured by expectations, and then on top of that, I have to put on, makeup, and then beautiful clothes, and then I'm photographed, but all of that is actually hiding the real me. It's actually hiding my face. So I've gone through a process in my life of finally being able to loosen those expectations, to be able to remove those masks and those there's so many crazy expectations that are put, I think, on everyone today in the world, but particularly, I think, on women in my profession.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of work of being able to say, I do not accept your beauty standards. I do not accept who you think I am. One of the most debilitating things is for somebody else to tell you who you are. Yeah. And I've gotten a lot of that in my life. Oh, you're an actress, or you're a model, or you can't be smart, or you can't have any depth, you must be, there's a whole list of, but all of us are in that sense, the victim of stereotypes, right? And assumptions. So I've worked really hard to reverse that, and a lot of my book is about that. And on social media, I do, of course, post glamorous photographs because it's part of my work, but then I always make sure that I post a photograph of me without makeup, with my kids, and I try to make that a statement as well. And of course, my big breakthrough moment, though, was after being diagnosed with multiple myeloma in 2009. I was on my treatment, and part of my treatment was steroids. And anyone who has been on steroids knows that it makes you gain a lot of weight. So I put on 40 pounds. And then in the middle of all that, I had not announced my disease publicly. In the middle of all of that, I was invited to walk on the red carpet because I had a project releasing. And so this was a real kind of a watershed moment in my life, because the red carpet in particular is a place which is all about scrutiny, and everybody's bitching, and they're like, oh, her shoes are terrible, and she's put on weight, and she's lost weight. It's very harrowing, actually, for your self-esteem. But I decided that I was going to subvert this moment, and I was going to make my announcement on the red carpet. 40 pounds overweight. And for me, that moment broke through all that self-consciousness. Because at the end of the day, I was talking about something that was so much more important. I was talking about, I'm fighting for my life, and yet I'm still here, and I have something important to tell you. Will you please support multiple myeloma and cancer? So all of that broke through the normal kind of very superficial concerns of the red carpet, and I was so comfortable in my skin, in my body, at my heaviest ever, that I said, I'm never going to go back.
Amazing. Round of applause.
Thank you. And that I've written about in my book as well.
So have you ever taken a digital detox?
I just did.
Oh, really?
I just did. I'm a big advocate of
Right.
digital detoxes because, there's something about our phones. Even if you say, I don't like it, my God, it's just...
Well, they're designed that
they're
way.
Designed
Right?
that way. They're
to-
designed that way. And I read something interesting, is that a lot of the guys who design this, or a lot of the guys in Silicon Valley, actually ban their own families,
They
right?
send their kids to another school.
They send their kids to another school, or they don't allow, they do digital detoxes on the weekend and things like that, because they know how insidious the devices are that they've designed. But I do that. I just come back actually from a meditation retreat, and it was a great digital detox where we actually put all of our phones, like I actually felt my stomach go as I put my phone into the box, and then we closed the box. It was the black box, and it was put aside. And genuinely was some anxiety for the first half an hour or so, and then after that, I looked around me. I was in this beautiful natural setting in Mulshi, and my senses tuned into the world in a very different way. So I try to do that regularly, and I try to encourage my family. My husband is the hardest guy to do. I literally have to kind of tear it away from him. But he's become much more conscious of it. So it's something that I advocate for everybody.
Let's ask the audience, how many folks here have done a digital detox?
Has anyone done a digital detox? Good for you.
A few. Let's ask, how many people are anxious or feel stressed about not being connected to their phones at any one point in time through the day?
Really? Anxious.
Wow. How many people sleep with their phones?
Wow.
More hands going up. Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
That's amazing.
Right. All right.
Can I ask though, one or two, someone who does a digital detox, what do you do exactly?
Wow.
There you go. Beautiful. Right. That's a detox from everything. That's a detox from everything.
So that's a nice segue. So I'm fascinated by the conversation on roots. I'm sitting next to this individual. So you've got an Indian father and a Polish mother. You're born in Canada. You've grown up in...
Actually, a lot in Calcutta, spent a lot of time in Calcutta.
Exactly. And then in the book, you wrote beautifully about this, your maternal grandmother with her elegancy sort of style. But it seems to be that India has always had a resonance with you. It's sort of been pulling you. What's that love-hate affair, whatever you have with the country, and where does it fuel your
No,
energy?
I mean, India is the seat of my soul.
Right.
It's very simple, I mean, in fact, my father who left, my father's Bengali. He left when he was about 20 to pursue his PhD, et cetera, et cetera. So imagine, and I'm an only child, so my father left so long ago, and imagine that his only child turns around and goes back. And I've always felt this strong draw. I think that what I appreciated also, my earliest memories in Calcutta, our ancestral home was in Sham Bazar, which is in North Calcutta, a very traditional part of Calcutta, was actually seeing all of life play out in front of me. I felt that there was an honesty and a rawness in life, in everyday life in India, that I couldn't find anywhere else in the world. As much as, the suburbs in Canada were too sanitized and clean for my taste. And beyond that, so it was actually one of my ambitions. I just said I just want to go and live in India as a young child. And I didn't really have a way to do it until suddenly my life took a very strange U-turn. But, even today, I maintain that I'm an Indian. This is my home. Right. And I've lived and worked all over the world, and I keep coming back. And right now I brought my daughters back because I want them to be deeply connected as well. Culturally, also the warmth that I get as well, I think is second to none. And I don't see it through rose-tinted glasses. There's a lot of issues in India as well. A lot of things that we need to improve. And I'm also very passionate about the things that we need to improve because I feel emotionally invested in the country. Right. If you don't care, then you don't care. Yeah. Then you're not as invested in making India a better place, for instance, for women and women's rights and, equality for all and, and talking about the environment and, all of these things I feel very passionately about. And we have such an incredible heritage. I also feel that, what ends up happening is when you spend time in the West, there are so many aspects of India that has been exported, basically, into the West and is being kind of revisited and rebooted and then sold back to India. And I think that that's a tragedy. I think that we should be doing that.
Yeah. Let's talk about your newest adventure, which is being a mom.
Yes.
And it's very sweet. The names of your two daughters are?
My daughters are Sufi and Soleil.
And you put those words together and
it becomes a souffle,
right.
which is a very tasty treat. Yeah. And we didn't plan that.
Yeah. So what does parenting mean to you, and what's the sense of how have you changed as a person after this event?
You know, parenting definitely makes me evaluate so many things in my life in a completely different way. And you know, in the interest of full disclosure, I wanted to say that I actually never wanted children for much of my life. And you know, when I finally did settle down in that sense and get married and then felt the need to have children, obviously as a cancer survivor, I wasn't able to carry my children, so I went in for surrogacy. And you know, so I feel very grateful for that as well. But that's a story in and of itself, because India's banned surrogacy, and you know, that's another story. But having children has, I'm sure that anyone else how many mothers here, just out of curiosity? Oh, I salute you. Working mothers are the bomb, right? It's incredible. I find that I have resources that I never knew that I have in terms of juggling and scheduling and things like that. But you know, at the end of the day, their faces and their love and this kind of a purity that I get from them and that I see from them, it just has cracked me completely open. When we talk about love and practices that open your heart, I think that just spending time with children is another thing that, you know, everyone should do. You know, it'll completely, again, soften your mind, soften your perspective, bring out compassion and love, which we all need more of. And yet they're so, you know, their curiosity has helped me see the world in a very different way. So I've recaptured my sense of wonder. Yeah. What about you? Because you're a new dad too.
I am. I've got, so my daughter Eva is going to be 1 tomorrow, and I've got a 3-year-old as well.
Yay!
So, yeah. But yeah, they want to know about you.
No.
So my last question, and I'm sure the audience has got questions as well. I read this beautiful story in the book of the time you met this young Yugoslavian boy. Was it Goran? Croatian boy.
Yeah.
Goran. And then you met him in the gym, and then you just sort of upped and decided to follow him across Europe and turn up on his doorstep.
Yeah.
And there's this beautiful phrase, which is suitcase by your feet and the big pale blue sky behind. That's the girl. Which sort of captures that. So where do you find that energy, optimism, and how do you maintain that in this stressful, chaotic, problem-filled world that we each have to combat every day?
Well, that was also a slightly different version of me. That was me at, you know, 16 or 17, and, you know, with the just the relentless optimism of youth. And I do feel that I've maintained my optimism. But it's an ongoing effort, because I think that, you know, as I mentioned, you know, first of all, as a species, we have a little bit of a negativity bias. Right. And then whenever you turn on the news, I mean, what do you hear? You know, every single headline is all doom and gloom, and you know, and again, as I said, we choose sometimes not to concentrate on the good things that are happening. In fact, there's some interesting alternative, for instance, news feeds. Like there's one in India, I think it's called The Good India or The Alternative India, where they talk about the good things that are happening, because simultaneously there are incredible things happening. You know, there are people who are chucking it up and going and becoming organic farmers, or, you know, or dedicating their life to, you know, rebuilding bamboo forests or rebuilding a village, and there are great selfless acts that are happening every day. So I think where you put your attention is where you go. Right. You know, your attention will lead you in that direction. So I do consciously try to practice, as I said, not positivity. I believe that positivity, just sort of positivity all the time, is also unnatural to us as a human species, and that kind of also ends up suppressing a lot of emotions. But, you know, deciding, like, as I said, I do believe that meditation has helped me a lot, because it helps me to understand my thoughts, right? By the way, meditation, in case for people who haven't done Vipassana and haven't, tried it out or experienced it in depth, there's this misunderstanding that meditation is about blanking out and, making your mind completely blank. And it's not. Actually, meditation is about just watching your mind and the thoughts that go through your mind. And what ends up happening, what causes us a lot of suffering every single day, is every single thought that goes through our mind, we give it too much importance and we believe it's real. I think that he looked at me that way, I think he doesn't like what I'm wearing, or she looked at me that way, she probably, underestimates, she probably thinks that I'm not good enough. Like so many self-doubts, right, floating through our mind. We have this constant soundtrack. And something as simple as sitting and looking at it can give you the space to say, I don't have to believe every single thought that goes through our mind. Believe it or not, our thoughts are not real. They're not real. That for me was a huge revelation when I went to my first meditation retreat. I imagined it the way that this Buddhist nun described it to us, is that we are the sky. We are pure and stainless and boundless. And the thoughts are these passing clouds, right? And what happens? Sometimes the sky is full, right? It's bad weather, it's inclement weather, and so that we can't actually see the sky for the dark clouds, and that's when we get a lot of negative thoughts and things like that. But wait long enough and what happens? The sky will clear up, right? And, then sometimes the sky just has a few beautiful fluffy clouds. But having a relationship with your thoughts, examining your thoughts, is really important for good mental hygiene, also for fighting and battling depression, and for, in general, maintaining, I think, an optimistic point of view and not having to believe all the stories that are fed to us by society, by our education, by, the news. And so that's why, again, I keep going back to meditation, because it's played such a strong, important, positive role in my life in helping me sort through all those thoughts. And so therefore, when I was in a position where I genuinely was fighting for my life, I wasn't overwhelmed by those negative thoughts. I'm not saying that I didn't get negative thoughts and I didn't feel fear. Yeah. I'm not saying I didn't feel fear, but I continued in spite of the fear. I made friends with my fear. I was able to say, hey, fear, how are you doing? Why don't you sit down and have a cup of tea with me? Right. Instead of getting flattened by the fear. Yeah. And I am not a superwoman. I promise you, this is a very simple technique. Anyone can do it, and there are many people who are masters of the mind and far more advanced than I am. But I share this with you because I feel it's so important, especially people who are accomplished working people and who might not find the time and who have very busy minds. So the most important thing, the first and most important piece of self-care, I find, is just sitting, and you don't even have to call it a formal meditation. Just sit quietly, be with yourself, and you don't have to believe everything your mind tells you.
Great. So I'm sure there are a couple of questions in the audience. So I'm cognizant of the time as well, so maybe we'll take 3 questions. So there's a lady up front. Yeah.
Good evening. You were my first interview some 18, 19 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
At First City. Yeah. So I'm just curious to know, you mentioned that you've been meditating for the last 20 years. So have you ever experienced anxiety or depression? I was a tad late. So have you ever experienced anxiety and depression despite meditation?
Yes, I have. Because it's not that it's been some consistent, practice either. I started it because I was experiencing anxiety and depression, because I was experiencing a lot of self-doubt, because I was experiencing very toxic thoughts, and I was actually also struggling with an eating disorder as well. I was bulimic and anorexic for a lot of my youth. And that is much more a mental disorder rather than just a pure physical disorder. So, it happened. I call myself a bit of a late bloomer, actually. I've always been a bit spiritually inclined as well, though. So when I started, the one great thing I think about living in such a connected world today is we have more access to this information. Yes. I was not able to access as much information about meditation and retreats and things like that. And I had to, I've gone on a retreat in Dharamshala for 6 months, wow, and been cut off from the world. But it was one of the best things I ever did. But it wasn't as common. Now, what's wonderful again about the world we live in is that we do talk about mindfulness. Mindfulness is being brought into corporate settings, into everyday settings, and we can apply it. You can go away on a 3-day retreat and find great benefits. But what I talk about, this great mental hygiene, I mean, sometimes meditation is not always the answer for everything.
Absolutely.
I think that meditation is in fact, I just came back from a meditation retreat, which is run by a therapist. She's a therapist and a meditation teacher, and she actually combines the two. So I'm not saying that it is the absolute, antidote to everything, but it is a fantastic start, I think. It should be a part of everybody's life.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Gentleman in the back.
Lisa, if there was one thing that you could do over in life, what would it be?
That I could do over.
Yes.
Wow.
Regrets. Yeah, I'd like to say I don't have any regrets. I've had a very juicy life, and I've loved I also have this strange ability to be in my life and watch myself, be an observer as well. So even through the difficult times, I've been able to watch it and take notes almost, and that's all gone into my book. But I think maybe I would have had my kids earlier. That's probably the only thing I would have done differently.
One more. No? Okay.
I think we're all meditating together.
Yeah.
I think everyone's taking my advice very seriously. We're being very silent. I like it.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate. I just want to say thank you for honestly, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the honor of your attention. I really appreciate it. I know in today's world we have so many choices. The fact that you honored me with your attention, and I know you've had a long day. I'm deeply grateful, and I'm expressing gratitude to all of you, and great gratitude for calling me here.
Thank you so much for being here. And what I got it in 3 words, and I can say is never give up. And calm down and relax. And digital detox is very,
fantastic,
very important.
Yes.
Be optimistic and be positive.
Yes.
And what a lovely closing session for our SHRM India Annual Conference. And thank you so much for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, Lisa will be in the next room. She already has signed books, and if you want to have a photo with her, she is here. So she would be moving to the next room, and we'll open the door, and you can go there and have a picture with her and buy her book. And that is my request to you, because there's lot of learning. Yeah. And this brings SHRM conference to an end. Thank you, everybody, for all your support. Thank you, the partners, and thank you, the hotel, and my SHRM team, which always does an amazing job in always reinventing this event. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Marcus. It's lovely.
A small token for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.